Thank you, Shannon. And I hope everyone can see my screen okay. Great. Well, thank you for having me, and I'm really glad that you all are opting to spend an hour of your evening talking about GIS tonight and this tool that we have put together for the Upper Delaware. I will say that this project was started back in 2016, so it has been quite a saga. As many of you probably know, the federal and the state governments don't work very fast. So we have it's been a long road, but we now have, I think, something that that is workable for all of the within the framework that's required by the Department of Interior. I'll also say that I'm excited to be involved in a current project right now in the Upper Delaware, working with the Friends of the Upper Delaware to do some mapping of knotweed along the river corridor in a few places. So that's also in conjunction with the Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River. So hopefully at some point over the next year, I can come back and you can learn about knotweed mapping. But tonight's focus is on this GIS tool that we've been working on, and just a little bit about the Center for Land Use and Sustainability. We are really all about, we're kind of almost like an outreach arm of Shippensburg University. And if you're not sure where Shippensburg is, we're in South Central Pennsylvania, just about 30 miles north of the Maryland line. And I love working in the Upper Delaware because it's a really nice change of scenery. And I've been disappointed that I haven't been able to make work trips up there very often. But our work with the Upper Delaware and with your communities has really kind of fits right into to what our mission is. And our vision is to really kind of, take the science and put it into the hands of people who make decisions or who want to use it to support decision making. So we work across multiple project areas, and you'll see number one is land use planning and decision support, and that's exactly where this project falls. We use, in our work, we use geographic information systems almost every day. And since I thought I might have a mix of people here tonight, I thought I would just include a couple of slides to talk about the background of what our tool is built on, kind of the GIS framework that our tool is built on. And this is kind of like a textbook definition of what a GIS is. It's designed to capture, store, manipulate, analyze, manage, and present spatial or geographical data. And today, it has really moved into the digital age, although I think we can look back to the 1950s and 60s as kind of when the idea of GIS was really starting to form. And then as computers and computer technology improved, it kind of took off. So essentially, a workflow is, we ask a question, we acquire data, usually spatial data. We use a GIS to examine and explore and analyze data, and then we can use that to make decisions. In land use planning, a lot of times we think about layers of data. So for example, things like roads, land use, parcels, things about the water systems, elevation. We kind of think about that in layers, and the tool that I'm going to share with you allows you to kind of overlay multiple layers of information that are related to a specific area of interest. So you can visualize it all in one place. You can add data to the system if you want to, and then perform some pretty simple overlays to gather information about it. So for this work, our objective was to create an effective online spatial decision support tool that can be used for substantial conformance and project review, within sort of the project area of the Upper Delaware Scenic River. And our target audience is, primarily the Upper Delaware partners, but we built this tool to include data for all of the municipalities that intersect the river corridor. So it can really be used, this is now a publicly available tool, so it can really be used, for anyone within, who lives or works in that area where they might find these data interesting. But again, our primary focus was on pulling together data sets to support project review. And, within a project review site location, so a potential site where there might be a new development happening or an alteration to the landscape, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. So, for example, is it in the Upper Delaware boundary? Is it in the scenic or the recreational part? In terms of landscape conditions, one interest potentially is flood risk, for example. And then, what roads are there, what protected lands are there, what wetlands are there. So if we have, for example, a target parcel that is undergoing project review, we might want to know, where it is relative to the boundary. And before this tool and before the advent of GIS, you kind of had to look at a parcel map and then look at, a boundary map separately. You would need to find the municipality. You'd need to determine if it's scenic or recreational. And you might want to know a lot of other information about the zoning, about wetlands or water resources, about slopes and land cover. And so with this tool, you can now, identify your parcel relative to all of these layers of information. So that's my very quick overview. I wanted to spend most of the time tonight actually kind of walking you through the tool. And I also wanted to just flash my email up there again one more time in case anybody wants to reach out to me directly. And I can also put that in the chat later on. So please feel free to get in touch with me directly, and I'd be happy to talk with you if you have more questions. But I thought we could just go ahead and jump right into the tool. So I know Shannon shared the link with you all, and I don't know if anyone has had a chance to take a look at it yet, but if you click on that link that Shannon sent you, this is what you see. The first thing that comes up is a data distribution liability statement, and I will just make the point here right off the bat that all of the data that goes into this tool was not generated by us or the National Park Service. It's kind of public domain data or data that comes from the counties or municipalities. So it is dynamic and it may change over time when data are updated. So for example, national data sets that relate to slope, for example, are updated on a regular basis. So you might see some changes in data sets based on updates. And of course, things like zoning changes. And as part of our project, we actually developed a protocol to make annual updates to the data that goes into these tools. So that's particularly important when we're thinking about parcel boundaries and when we're thinking about zoning. So I think some of you may have, I'm getting a little feedback. I don't know if anyone else is hearing that. So I hope the audio is okay on your side. I think some of you may have worked with Jennifer about this, and I think this is now potentially going to be in Cody's responsibility on an annual basis to reach out to the counties and municipalities and acquire updated parcel data sets and and if there are updates to zoning maps, to incorporate those updated maps as well. So we developed a workflow to update some of those most important data sets on roughly an annual basis. And so we hope that you don't notice too many discrepancies between, what's current today versus what you see in the map. So that's my disclaimer, I guess, and also the disclaimer that is part of the tool. So that is, you have to click and agree and then click OK. And then this is our kind of base study area and the area that the tool covers. I think I'll start out with just some sort of basic navigation. You can zoom and pan just using your mouse, and you also have zoom in and zoom out buttons here. Over on the right hand side is a list of all of the layers that are incorporated into the tool. So we have the Upper Delaware River Corridor, the segment designations, the township boundaries, and then we have zoning for all of the townships. We have flood areas. These are the FEMA floodplain maps, National Wetland Inventory, which show wetlands. We have protected lands, soils, vegetation, and watershed boundaries. You'll see that some of these are grayed out, like flood hazards is grayed out right now. That's because this data set is pretty detailed and so takes some time to draw in. So you kind of have to zoom in a little bit before you can visualize that layer. And you visualize layers just by turning them off and on. So that's our flood hazards. And this little arrow right here, you can click to see what the colors on the map mean. So for example, for the flood layer, the blue is the waterway, the floodway. The yellow is the 2% annual chance of flood, 0.2%. That's what is commonly referred to as the 500-year floodplain. And then the pink is the 1%, commonly referred to as the 100-year floodplain. Now, with all of these layers, I guess I'll add in one more disclaimer, is that the positional accuracy is not 100% precise, right? So especially when it comes to something like floods or wetlands, things that have potentially a regulatory perspective to them, you wouldn't want to use this as an engineering tool. You want to call the engineers. So this is kind of for data visualization, data exploration. But again, I think that you have to keep in mind that the positional accuracy is not always right on. So for engineering applications, this is not the tool for you. So in any case, these are again some of the different data layers. We have protected lands. Here's an example of positional accuracy where we have different representations of the boundary from the base map that is provided by ESRI compared to the GIS layer that's provided by the National Park Service. We have soils. We have a vegetation layer. This one only applies to the Upper Delaware River Corridor area because this particular layer is produced by the Park Service and focuses specifically on forest types. So you can get kind of a neat idea of all the different forest types in the corridor. And then we have watershed boundaries as well. So again, those are the data layers available. If you want to and you have the, you know, I guess technical savvy or you like to explore, you can also add additional data. Either you can actually upload your own data set, or you can also, there's a lot of data that are available kind of free online. So you can do searches and bring in different data sets as you like up with this add data tool. This is back to layers. One other visualization piece I wanted to show you is under base map. You can change your base map to, for example, if you want to look at aerial imagery, you can click that layer on. The topographic map is available, and then just a plain old street map view is available. We have also included custom layers that show slope. So with this layer where it's bright pink, you have very steep slopes. We also have a couple of different land use layers in here. So you can see forests and farmlands and built up areas and roads. And then there's a high resolution land cover data set that gives you a little bit more detail. So, so that's something you can pick again to sort of visualize, you know, slopes or land use or imagery or whatever, you know, that's your choice. And it also, again, sort of helps visualize where there might be potential issues with something like slope. Okay, are there any questions out there yet? I'm going to work through an example where we might that kind of shows some of the analysis of this, but I thought I'd pause for questions. So I see one hand up. Steve, what do you got?
Hi, I have on my other monitor the GIS tool that you know I opened up, but it doesn't have any of those layers that you just showed.
Where are you? So there's a couple of different icons up here. This one with the squares is where you get to the base map galleries, yeah. So you can change the background.
Yeah, that's fine. But the one that you had before, the layers, which is just to the right of the icon that you're at, the layer icon is over one more to the right.
Yep.
And I clicked on that, and there are no layers that are listed. Nothing similar to what you have.
Okay, well, I don't know what's going on there, Steve. I think
later, maybe she could help me.
Yeah, no, we should. That might be something we should troubleshoot. I don't know if this does take a little bit of bandwidth to display everything. So it might be because you're also on Zoom at the same time. I don't know. But this should be publicly available, so anybody should be able to access it and see everything like I'm seeing it.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to take any more time.
Yeah, no, but thank you for that. This will be a good opportunity for all of you out there to beta test this for us, so we can really get an idea of how well it's working in the real world. Okay, so I thought I'd just work through a real quick example of, or maybe a couple of examples to show how you can use this for doing something like project review. And kind of a neutral location that I like to use is the address for the Upper Delaware Council. So this is for the UDC. And if you're searching by address, you can, you know, just type it in here into the search field until it pops up, and then it will automatically zoom you straight to that location. And so if you're evaluating this particular location, you know, maybe you want to change the base map and see what the imagery looks like. In this case, it's a nice imagery of a cloud, what the slope looks like, what land use might look like. And I'm getting some slow response on my computer as well. So, so we have our location, and now we want to maybe ask some questions. So this is the tool. This little button up here in the upper left is our screening tool. And the first thing you do with the screening tool is you select a location. And so I often, if you're selecting a single parcel, you can just use this select by rectangle and just, you know, select it. And when it turns blue, you know that it is successfully selected. If you want to, if you're a GIS expert, you can upload your own shapefile, or you can also do a selection by coordinates. But a lot of times, again, the easiest thing to do is just you know, use that little select option there. When you run a report, you need to make sure that your layers are turned on, because if they're turned off, they won't be included in the report. So, for example, if I want to know the Upper Delaware segment designation, I can turn that on. This is this Tustin? Yep. Zoning. We'll take a look at flood hazards. We'll take a look at wetlands, protected land, soils, vegetation, watersheds. So you turn all of those on, and then you can click on the report button. And what returns is this initial window. These red exclamation points that come up are essentially telling you that layer is not turned on. So it wasn't included in the analysis. And if it has a number here, it means that essentially you got a hit in there. So your UPD segment designation, we are in the recreational designation. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is the square footage of the parcel. And you can actually change that if you want, for example, to see it in acres. You can just change the units. So this is 0.2 acres, and 0.2 acres of that is in our recreational segment designation. It's in Tustin Township. And our Tustin Town zoning is downtown business. No flood hazards. So we did not intersect with any flood hazards. We did not intersect with any wetlands. We intersected with the National Park Service, scenic and recreational river boundary. We have Tunkhannock gravelly loam as our soil. We have a couple of different I guess upland, residential, and transportation communications and utilities in terms of vegetation. And then we are in the Peggy Run Delaware River watershed. So that's all the information that you can compile about a parcel. And then you can also kind of create a nice, it will create sort of a nice printable document that summarizes all of that same information. So it'll give you like a little map of your location, and then a summary, and then all of that same information summed up. So if, let me do one more. I'm going to turn off some layers here so that my Zoom doesn't crash. And I'm just going to sort of choose randomly. let's do something down here. So you may want to do another search. You just go back to this beginning and start over. And if you have kind of a large area that is of interest, you might want to draw a polygon around it. So you can draw a polygon like that. And what township are we in? Are we still in Tustin? Yeah, we are. Okay. And I'll turn on all of my layers to include here and generate the report. And so again, for this area, we've got 104.56 acres. We're in the scenic designation, and you can see here that 62 of that 104 acres is in the scenic river designation. And that is because obviously this one is partway in and partway out. We have Tustin Township, we're all in one township. And the zoning, we are across a couple of different zoning areas, rural residential and low density residential. We've got a couple of wetlands. We've got, again, one protected lands with the National Park Service. A few different soils, multiple different vegetation types. And we are in the West Kalang Creek. I'm sure I did not say that correctly. Some of those watershed names are a little tough, you guys. But anyway, we can print that up and you can share it, turn it into a PDF and email it, or whatever you might want to do with it. So that is the tool in a nutshell. I know I probably went through that demonstration pretty quickly. So yeah, we have plenty of time for questions, and I see how to view data by parcels, and I think that you can, if we go back here and start over, I think you can select multiple parcels. Wow, using that rectangle tool. If they're all together. And if you wanted to add, I think you can hold down the shift key and maybe not, and select additional ones. I thought that you could do multiple selections there, but that might not work. So I think you can select multiple parcels as long as they're adjoining. I see a question from Colleen about if the images are in real time, and they are not. The data, like the zoning data and flood hazard data, wetlands inventory data, those data sets are, they should not be more than a year old, because like I said before, we update the data on an annual basis. And when we look at these in the base map, if you look at imagery here in the base map, this imagery is not in real time, although it usually is pretty recent. And sometimes it'll tell us the date of acquisition, but I'm seeing that that is not the case here. So I'm not sure what the underlying date of this is, but usually these images are recent, but they may be a year, 2 years, 3 years old.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions out there? I guess I'm interested to hear from you all if you anticipate how you might use this. Yep, that's a good question, Heather. Are there links to things like what is allowable in the zoning district, what the forest types mean, or the quality of the data? So we did not include links to, for example, the zoning ordinance for a particular township. But you know, most of the time that's information that's available on the website. And we are putting together a companion, like a short how-to document that will also include the data sources. So we do have some item details actually. So we do have metadata and descriptions here. So for example, for the zoning data set, zoning data has been provided by the counties, and that there may be some issues with those. And for example, the vegetation, that is a data set that was created by the National Park Service, and so we have additional information here. And occasionally, I think in the metadata, there are links to additional information. So Lori asked a question, and Cody, I'm going to pass this to you. How will this tool be rolled out by the MPS?
Yes, so I would have to talk to our superintendent, but our intention is to put a link on our website under, and I'm not sure where that will be located at, but we will probably do some form of a press release saying that this tool is available to everybody that wishes to have internet access and that lives in the community. But like I said, as of right now, my intention is to put it on the website. So if somebody from out of town wants to know, or like I said, if anybody that's in the river corridor, they can go to the website and access it.
Colleen, did you still have your hand raised, or is that from before? We can't hear you. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
No, my question was answered.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Aaron asked, how should errors be reported? And that's a good question that, Cody, we haven't talked about. Our kind of official involvement in this project ends at the end of this year. And so at that point, the tool will kind of be the full responsibility of the folks at Upper Delaware NPS. So that might be one reporting avenue. But again, a lot of what we collected are data sets that were generated by townships or by the counties, and so I guess alerting us to issues in the data is great, but ultimately it might be something that gets passed on to a township or a county or another government agency to resolve. So Aaron, that's a very good question. And Cody, that's something that we should consider in terms of working out a protocol for that.
Yes, absolutely.
And in addition to, I just want to mention too, in addition to Dr. Jantz, we also have, you already heard Cody speak. Cody's the land use planner at National Park Service. So we have him here. We have UDC staff here, our executive director, Lori, as well as our secretary, Ashley, and some of our board members. So if anyone has any questions related to this as it works for us as well, feel free to ask those. And I see Heather has a question as well, so.
Yeah, Heather's put me on the spot here. So, Heather, I'm going to try this. If you want to add extra layers, so Heather's referring to an endangered species layer for New York State, and you can search for it. So I am going to search for New York endangered species, and we're just going to see what happens.
Did you get that already, Maverick?
So I'm trying a couple of options here, and let's see. I'm not seeing right away the endangered species layer, Heather, but there are, potentially some other layers here that might be of interest. There's landfills, there's wetlands, regulatory 100-foot buffers for certain areas, depth to Utica shale, municipal wastewater discharge facilities. So it may be that the endangered species layer that you're specifically interested in might not be hosted on the ESRI ArcGIS Online server. They may be hosting it through some other online mapping service. It may be that I just haven't found it because I don't have the right search terms. You can, if you know the URL of the web service that is that you want to include, you can pop that in, and then you can also upload a file as well. So lots of options there, even though Heather, I didn't succeed at bringing in the endangered species layer. You should be able to do that, and it should be easy, especially if it's being served on ArcGIS Online. So Aaron asked for forest type and forest cover. We do have forest type. We have vegetation as outlined by the National Park Service database. That is only available for the corridor, but it's a pretty detailed map of forest community types across the corridor. And you can visualize forest cover by either using the National Land Cover database. So the greens here are forests, or using the high resolution land cover database. So we do have that available for visualization. Okay, so I'm seeing a question about the extent of data layers, and the extent of most of the data. So our primary focus was on the corridor, but whenever possible, we tried to also include data for the entire township intersecting it. So the zoning obviously goes the whole way. For some of these other data layers, I'm going to turn off vegetation. I believe many of them are included for all of the township area that intersects. Soils and protected lands. So there may be some gaps if depending on the extent of the boundaries of the municipalities. But like I said, for most of these data, we have them all for the corridor, and we have most of them for the data, or for the extents of the municipal boundaries. So if you're doing, if you're seeing specific areas where that are missing data, that might be something to follow up with us about. In terms of moving outside of the corridor or outside of the municipalities that intersect the corridor, I don't think that that is in the plan. Heather asks if we can do a query. And this tool, this screening tool, which is sort of a tool that was developed by Esri, this particular tool does not allow for that level of analysis. That kind of more complex query isn't supported by this particular tool. The most complicated things you can do is kind of do a buffer search, but it's really just looking at locations. So if that's the particular type of analysis that you would like to perform, I think that it would be able to, I think that might be something to work with the Park Service to take a look at some of the specific databases or data sets on a desktop version of the software. And I'm seeing another question about pulling up a specific tax parcel. And this is a question I was kind of expecting to see. And so the short answer is no. You cannot search by parcel ID. One of the biggest challenges we ran into in developing this tool was developing it in a way that meets the very strict policies related to privacy protection that are part of the Department of Interior's kind of regulations. So anything that could link information being hosted by the Park Service to an individual was not permitted. So you can view the parcels, you can see the parcel boundaries. When you zoom in, you can see them. You can select a parcel, but we were not able to include other information about the parcel. Like we couldn't display or share the parcel ID, and so that means you can't search by parcel ID. So that is something that actually we negotiated with with staff at the national office of the Park Service in Washington D.C. For them to consider and to decide, and eventually they came down and said you cannot share any of that level of personal information through this tool. So with this tool, you can search, you can locate parcels, but you cannot find the parcel ID, and you cannot search by parcel ID. Whoa, these are tough questions. Can cellular phone coverage be revealed? I don't know the answer to that question, Colleen. That's a great question. Under add data, that might be something that you could search for to see if there is a map out there. So, you know, there might be some things out there that you could bring in to take a look at cell service. That's a really great question. So all of those types of things you could certainly, you know, search for under the add data map and just see what's out there. Another question is, if you import, so if you bring in the county parcel layer, then could you search for parcel ID? I think that you potentially could if the imported layer has that information in it. And most of the parcel data sets, I think, are actually hosted online by the counties. So on the county websites, you can find the parcel data and the parcel ID information. You can search by address, so that might be the go-between between a parcel data set coming, you know, that's being served on a county website versus this parcel layer that's in here.
Those were some great questions. I appreciate all of those. Some of those are things I hadn't even thought of, so that's really
Yes.
Are there any other questions, either in the chat or you can feel free to shout them out?
Yep. So Aaron asks who hosts the tool, and the tool is being hosted on the National Park Service ArcGIS online server. So you can see up here in the web address, it's nps.maps.arcgis.com. And because it's being hosted on a National Park Service server, essentially, that's one of the main reasons why, well, that is the reason why we had to comply with all of the regulations related to privacy information and similar issues. So if it's a tool that is hosted on, you know, a federal government server, then there is quite a lot of regulation that comes to bear on those data sets. So it is hosted by the National Park Service.
Yeah, it looks like those are all the questions. And
All right.
As Heather said, this is a wonderful resource. It's great to see all the zoning overlays on here. It's really helpful for planners and for anyone on planning and zoning boards too, to just be able to quickly look at it. So we really appreciate you taking the time to show us the tool and go kind of more in depth with it. And this was recorded, so I will be putting that up on our social media channels. And if anyone has any other questions, feel free to let us know. If not, like I said, email me if you need a training certificate. We thank everyone for your participation and for being here.
Yeah, and I'll just put in one more plug that that you all are. This is kind of our first chance to invite a bunch of beta testers. So we've already found one bug that we're working on resolving. And I told my staff, I'm like, don't touch it until tomorrow because I didn't want it to crash while we were looking at it today. But if you find any, problems with it, any, missing data, if it's doing something unexpected, please feel free to, you can reach out to me directly. I'll just pop my email in the chat before everybody logs off. And, or I'm sure Shannon could send you my way as well. So please, let us know how this is working because we haven't had it much outside of the, of the inner circle until tonight. So.
This has been really wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll leave it open for another minute just so everyone can write down the emails from the chat box. And we're really grateful everyone spent some time with us tonight. And thank you, Dr. Jantz, for your time. We appreciate it. This is
of course. I'm excited to finally get this little bird out of the nest. So
definitely, we're grateful for that. It's been a long project. So excellent. All right. Well, have a great night, everybody. And I'll be sending a follow-up email tomorrow with the recording and information. So have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you all again soon.